Having known about the Dark Souls series for years and the famous difficulty of the games, I never actually got around to playing the series. Later when Bloodborne got released, the game looked interesting, sporting a great style and some interesting enemies, but it never made me want to play it. Partly due to the difficulty, and the repetition that difficulty would no doubt lead to. Constantly dying and retrying the same sections and fights repeatedly, which may lead to fatigue and me simply moving on to another game. With the title recently being on sale on the PSN store, I decided to once and for all try this game and see whether my preconceptions would be justified or whether the game would surprise me and actually be something I enjoyed. Welcome to MaxPowerPlay. Let me know what you think of Bloodborne or the Dark Souls series down in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up or down and be sure to check out the other gaming opinions, news and reviews, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. After around 3 or 4 hours of playing and existing in this world, I thought the combat was average, repetition was showing itself, the story was non-existent, inconsistent frame rate, and the harsh difficulty was sucking any enjoyment I may otherwise have been having with the game. I was prepared to give in and accept that this game simply was not for me, but something happened after that 4-hour mark. I was starting to understand the combat mechanics more, the timing of my actions and those of the enemies. I was slowly becoming stronger and was understanding more about the game. Those first 3 or 4 hours were rough, but I'm glad I didn't throw in the towel, and now I wanted to talk about how, for me, Bloodborne went from a game to forget to perhaps one of the greatest games I have played in the last decade. When all the cogs of this gothic nightmare got turning for me, it turned into a sweet dream of blood and death. This video is why I believe Bloodborne is the greatest game so many gamers will give up on before they realise its true brilliance. Bloodborne is a type of game that basically goes against what the majority of other games do in the modern gaming world. A player is thrust into this world with next to no knowledge about how to survive or what to do apart from a few dialogue boxes that players can read to tell them the basics of the controls. But even these don't delve into the combat information that is required to really be successful when being in combat. This game is a great example of why button mashing won't work, and if the game is played in this regard, then players should expect to be dying a lot more than they already will be. Combat needs to be learned, and more importantly, it's the timing of your own attacks and those of your enemies that need to be learned and perfected. It's about knowing when to attack and when not to. It's about knowing when to dodge your opponent's attacks, and then going in and dealing the most damage a player can. There is a risk-reward component to the battles in the game, letting a quick enemy come at the player so they may use their firearm just as the enemy is about to strike so they can be stunned, then following up with a brutal attack to strip away as much health from the enemy as possible. Time the shot wrong, and the player may be dead by 2 or 3 hits, unable to escape. This is even more perilous early on in the game due to how weak the player character is. But even the most skilled players can expect to die in this game, and often, failure to attack at the best times or move out of the way of the enemy can result in death, but making it even worse is having to run back to where you died. Checkpoints, indicated by the lamps that the player lights, are few and far between in the game, and it's as if the game is punishing you even more. When dying, your blood echoes are dropped, and the player needs to run back to retrieve them without dying. This is basically the currency used in the game to purchase weapons, armor, items, and it's used to also upgrade equipment and level up the character. But even with the dozens and dozens of deaths I've experienced, it's as if the game was calling me to keep going and to get revenge on whatever killed me. Let's take the blood-starved beast boss fight for example. Apart from the beast's quick attacks which can rip the player to shreds, it also has the ability to inflict poison as well, depleting the player's health constantly until the effect wears off or an antidote is taken. One time fighting this boss, I found myself running out of antidotes and seeing my health slowly run down. Drinking the blood vials to replenish the health wasn't enough, and death finally came. But the game makes it even more difficult than simply dying. When respawning, I had no health vials or antidotes, and now I also had no blood echoes to purchase more of these items. So now I needed to grind for these items to get my character adequately equipped, where I felt confident enough in taking on the boss again. It's as if the game purposely throws the player into the deep end right from the start, showing them the difficulty and frustration early on so gamers can get a taste of what truly awaits them in Bloodborne. It's there to weed out the more casual players by bringing death upon them constantly, bringing the repetition and the all too true feeling that they aren't progressing at all. The game doesn't want to try to hold the player's hand, and the game teaches us brutal lessons on what life is like within this gothic nightmare. And yet, with all of this cause for frustration, the game seems to rise out of what could potentially be its weaknesses and turns them into incredible strengths. For when a player achieves something in this game, it really feels like it's earned and deserved. Just as the game will beat the player down into submission, knowing many players will simply walk away never to return, it also dishes out extreme highs when a player succeeds. I am still fairly early on in the game, and already I question whether I have the skill and patience to see it through right to the end. But what I have seen, played and experienced so far is stunning in its brutality, both in its battles and how it punishes players. All of this exists in one of the best gaming worlds I have ever seen. It not only looks beautiful, with a fantastic Gothic style and grand architecture, but it's the intricate and fascinating level designs that the developers have come up with. The verticality of the map makes the environments that are explored more interesting, and the way that all the different areas are interconnected is a stunning example of great level or map design. Progressing in the game sees the players unlocking paths that take them to areas already visited, making the world highly connected, but also providing players with shortcuts when traversing it. The very reasons why someone may love Bloodborne are the same reasons why another will not enjoy it. Bloodborne treads a very fine line between fun and a chore. If gamers play games in order to escape reality somewhat, then Bloodborne can drag them back into it. Just like life, Bloodborne puts obstacles in a player's path, restricting their progress and causing frustration and sometimes anger. But it also gives great highs when the player accomplishes something, especially something that they thought was out of reach or they were incapable of doing. Often scarier than any horror game, more action-packed than many action games, and with a level of detail that many RPGs don't even have, Bloodborne is a triumph in video games on many levels. From world design, art design, lore, combat mechanics, and the sense of achievement, I recommend trying the game if anybody hasn't. Be prepared for frustration and repetition though, but also prepare yourself that it may very well be one of the greatest games that you almost passed on.